Welcome, everyone, to Voices of NCAJ, the podcast for the North Carolina Advocates for Justice. I am Amber Nimocks, your host and Director of External Affairs for NCAJ. Before we get started, I'd like to thank today's episode sponsor, Advocate Capital. Advocate is passionate about helping plaintiffs' attorneys get better results for their clients, mainly through their AdvoTrack case expense funding service. It allows firms to track case expenses and recover borrowing costs, which makes the net cost of borrowing zero on cases they win. And you can learn more at advocatecapital.com. Today, we are bidding adieu to a longtime member who is ending his affiliation with NCAJ after 24 years. Sean Cole can no longer be a member of NCAJ because he won election to serve as Superior Court Judge for Judicial District 10C of North Carolina's 3rd Superior Court Division. He assumes that office on January 1, 2025, so by the time this podcast airs, we will have to refer to him as His Honor. Sean, congratulations, and thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
So, in preparation for our chat today, I went back and reviewed your official member record in NCAJ's Member Central database, which you will no longer have to update. And I found some fairly interesting tidbits. For instance, your birthday is recorded in our records as the 29th of April, 2013. And also, you report that you have no meeting space available in your office, but also that the office space available for meetings can best be described as broad open savannas and also some mangrove swamps.
That's right. That's all correct.
You would say that both of these statements are still accurate.
The April 29th may not be accurate anymore, but the 2013 is that I'm as far as I can remember being 11 years old. So
okay.
That's sort of where I came up with that number. So
terrific. Excellent. So, in addition to having built a reputation as a trusted lawyer, enough so that voters in your district elected you to the bench, you also have a reputation for being a very funny and irreverent guy who has helped make the Wake County Bar Awards into the cultural institution that it is. So, how did you manage to do both of those things?
Well, if we're talking about becoming a trusted attorney and being involved in the bar awards, those are largely separate, I hope. The issue of being more of a trusted attorney and being relied upon both by clients and other people, that was just my goal from the beginning. Hopefully that's everybody's goal who gets into doing this. And I was really inspired by a lot of people in NCAJ. I started out in the 90s actually working for a defense firm, doing insurance defense work for State Farm and Allstate. And I worked at that job for about 3 years, decided it was not a good fit for me, and had an opportunity to join up with Martin & Jones at that time in 2000. And I still remember I interviewed with the firm. We had a blizzard in 2020. And another friend of mine had just taken a job with them and had called me and said they were looking for somebody to do general PI practice. And I had to get him to come over and help me dig my car out of a snowdrift so that I could get downtown to interview. And interviewed with Hoyt Tessner and started working with Martin & Jones in, I think it was February of 2020, and stayed there for several years. But one of the first things that I was told when I started there was that I was expected to join NCAJ and expected to be an active member. And it was not NCAJ then, it was the North Carolina Academy of Trial Lawyers, which is what it's still going to be what you'll hear me refer to it as, just because that's what I always referred to it as. But I got a lot of both encouragement and inspiration from listening to and meeting the lawyers at the trial lawyers at NCAJ. And I never got to spend a lot of time with, for instance, the national level organization for what AAJ now, but I did join another group called the Southern Trial Lawyers, which is a group of trial attorneys throughout the mostly the southeastern United States, but we've got other members around the country, which is very much the same. The main difference being is it does not have a political arm because it has members from basically every state. And so it's a network of attorneys that work together, associate on cases, refer cases back and forth, and have CLE in awesome locations. Their spring conference is always in New Orleans, and the fall conference rotates to different cities. It's been in Asheville once, and it's been in Charleston. So just great crowd of people, and you get to meet a lot of just really impressive attorneys. And then I had other people who were also at my level that were really inspirational. A lot of people that I worked with and got to know through NCAJ. And so I just got a lot of opportunities through the organization, got the chance for some leadership opportunities to serve as chair of the Young Lawyers Division and for the Auto Torts Division. I did the Auto Torts CLE update for years and years and years. And so just really enjoyed doing that.
And you said it was 2020, but it must have been earlier than
I'm
2020.
Sorry, 2000.
2000.
There was
Okay.
all those zeros and twos.
Right.
I can only really divide by 3. I can divide by 3 or multiply by 0.4 or 25%. Those are the only numbers I really work well with.
Yeah, three is a magic number for sure. Yeah. You found a lot of mentors to you had affinity within the organization of NCAJ.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the only reason that I don't run down a whole list of people is I will unquestionably forget people. And so, but there were just so many great people. I mean, and the other thing that I was always really blown away by was how great our staff has been through the years. And
I did not give you any money to say that.
That's right. I'm waiting on the check. So, but now, and the other thing is that I have also through the bar awards had gotten to work with the Wake County Bar Association staff, and they are also just a fantastic group of very committed people. And one of the great things about working with both the Bar Association and with NCAJ is when you get to work with people that are committed and dedicated to what they're doing, it inspires you to the same level of commitment and dedication. And I think that's really important. I think that those groups of people have allowed me to be part of really good communities that are dedicated to the profession and dedicated to the people in the profession. And I think that that's something that we can't overstate the importance of. I think you really have to surround yourself with good people. And if you don't, then you're asking for mediocrity if you don't do that. And so just have been really lucky. I was very fortunate in that regard, and the people I was exposed to and got to spend time with, got to learn with, got to work with. And the Bar Awards was very much the same thing. One of the things that I really appreciated about the Bar Awards, I was asked, Ripley Rand asked me to be a singer for a song about the closing of the smoking lounge in the old Wake County Courthouse.
Gosh, so that must have been
It was a long time ago. That was probably 2007 or 8, something like that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I remember asking him at the time whether or not he felt like I could get away with making fun of the smoking lounge, given that there were other older lawyers who utilized it a lot, and my concern that I didn't want to get a reputation for being a problem. And Ripley assured me that I already had a reputation for being a problem. And people needed to learn how to take a joke. And so, but over the years that just developed into more and more involvement. It's just been one of the best parts of my career, because people, despite what we do, I think that other than legal aid, that the NCAJ is a group that helps people, it helps poor people the most. And one of the things that I campaigned on was the fact people kept asking me, and you could tell a lot about what a voter's personal politics were, because a lot of people would ask me what I thought the biggest problem facing the judicial system was. And I said, well, it's money. It's always going to be money, because in 2 ways. One, there's not enough money to pay for our facilities and our judges and our courthouse staff and our systems that we use, like the new e-file system. But everything involved, the state needs more money. for that. And the judicial system has been defunded and defunded and defunded. And so that's a huge problem. But the other side of that is also that access to justice is a huge issue. And it's a huge issue everywhere. And it continues to be an issue in North Carolina, where if you don't have money, you don't have the ability in a lot of instances to get into court. And there are a lot of fields where people can't accept cases on a contingency fee basis. And fortunately, most of the cases that flow through NCAJ are cases that we're handling on a contingency fee, which I think is important, both because it encourages us as attorneys to have skin in the game every time, beyond just the professional level of knowing, okay, I need to pursue this because otherwise I'm not going to get paid. And this is what I'm doing for a living. And I've never had a client who, when I talk to them in those terms, I've never had a client who was offended by that, or who didn't understand it completely, or who didn't appreciate it. Because it's easy to say, look, my interest in this dovetails with yours. I'm never going to tell you to do something that will hurt your interest so that I make more money, but I don't get, if I don't recover something for you, I don't get paid either. So understand that when I give you this advice, I'm trying to make sure that I get you the best result that I can get you without putting you at risk, and or without putting you at risk that you don't want to take, or don't need to take.
What did you find the reaction to that answer when voters asked you that question and you said it's money? That's what's wrong with the justice system.
Well, a lot of people didn't like you. You could tell when people are like, "Oh no, that can't be right. That can't. We need more." They would talk about a lot of times when I would give them that answer, they would immediately change the subject, because what a lot of people just assumed when I would say that was that they hear that and they think, oh, that he means higher taxes. Well, I don't know. Maybe it just means we need to be more efficient with the money that we've got. Maybe it means we need to redirect some funds from other sources to that, although, where we would get that from, I don't know. But sometimes you would tell people that answer and they would be shocked. Sometimes people would hear that and immediately agree. And the ones who immediately agree are the people that have been through that issue, or who have friends and family who have been through the issue of not being able to have money to get legal help. And like I said, sometimes it's hard, if not impossible, to do. But someone who has had a terrible injury, or even just a run of the mill injury that many people have had, a whiplash type injury, a bad sprain strain where they have to miss a month or 2 months of work, and they're going to be able to mostly recover from that and get back into the swing of their lives. Most people are not more than 1 or 2 paychecks away from catastrophe. Most people don't have the savings to get through that. And so if people had to pay their lawyers to pursue workers' comp claims and personal injury claims, most of them just couldn't do it. They'd have to take whatever the first offer was. And, the number of people that still do that is heartbreaking from a perspective of someone who has a $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 case and gives it away for a few $1,000s because they can't pay their light bill, or they're going to have their car repossessed, so they can't get to the doctor to get treatment. And so, when you talk about the sponsors for Today Advocate and other companies that I've worked with over the years, sometimes that's great to be able to help people that way by getting funding for a case. But at the same time, sometimes the person doesn't want to do that, and they're left between a real rock and a hard place. And so a contingency fee attorney may be the only chance that they've got, not just at getting a recovery, but getting the treatment that they need and getting a shot at having their life back. And, and I've told my clients for years, and I was encouraged from the very beginning of doing plaintiffs work to do this. I've told clients repeatedly, if we don't get you a nickel, we want to make sure that you get as much medical treatment as you need to try and get better. You want to get better. If you're not going to, the money is fantastic. That's what we want to get you. Of course, if we can get you that, that's great. But you really want to be healthy again, and that's got to be your primary goal. And if you ever have a client who balks at that, that's often a red flag. That's something that lets you know you may have someone who's not in it for the right reasons. And it's not our job necessarily to determine what somebody's moral motivation needs to be for pursuing their case, but it can be. You need to use that as an attorney when you hear something like that, or when you realize that somebody may be just in it for the money. That's when you need to sort of maybe adjust how you're approaching it and the advice that you give, because that person, you have to take things sometimes with a grain of salt, because I think we often forget that our job as attorneys is not just to do what the clients want us to do. It's to be a counselor and an advocate. And sometimes the best thing you can counsel somebody is to say, hey, let's look at why you're doing this. What do you want? What do you really want to get out of it?
Right. Keep your eyes on the prize. Yeah. Yeah. So how long did you do defense work before you
Just about 2.5 years.
okay.
I started, that's actually how I came to Raleigh. I had clerked with a firm called Patterson, Dilthey, Clay & Bryson, which has since been bought out by one of the larger national firms. And they were the parent firm of 2 or 3 other defense firms, Cranfield Sumner and I think T. Campbell, both grew out of them. And I was hired as a clerk during my second year at Wake Forest, and came here, worked for them, was hired by them as an attorney during my third year, and then moved to Raleigh and have been here ever since. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So was there a road to Damascus moment, or you just wear you down, or how'd you move over to the plaintiff side?
for anyone who's done billable hours, no matter what setting that was in, breaking your life into 10 and 15-minute segments every day and writing it down is soul crushing, to say the best, to say the least. That was part of it, certainly. And I did see people, certainly when I did that, who were absolutely gaming the system. There was little or no question that they were just in it for a payday. And more than once, when we got to mediation or got done with depositions, when I had the chance to talk to someone and say, look, we know X, Y, and Z to be true. We know that what you have told us is not. I had more than one person just dismiss their case and walk away because they knew that they were caught. That's kind of a strange feeling, because you feel good that you stopped somebody from misusing the system, but it's also just a strange feeling to have encountered somebody who's really just a con artist. But I also felt good about getting those people out of the system, because for each person like that, they're hurting everyone else who's really hurt. Somebody who's trying to take advantage, who's making up an injury, who's making up who was at fault for a wreck, who decides to try and prey on someone that they think won't fight back, and not understanding that there's a multi-billion-dollar insurance company on the other side that's definitely going to fight back. And it makes it harder for people who have even smaller injuries, but also people who have catastrophic injuries, who have to fight those same fights. The people that do the thing, people that are dishonest in that regard, create data points for the insurance carriers to say, oh, well, maybe your client's really hurt and maybe they're not, but we have these 10,000 people last year. So that was not that difficult. That was okay to deal with. I felt like I was accomplishing something good there. But at the same time, I knew that if I did a good job in court, that someone who was hurt was either going to get less than maybe they should, or that they were going to get nothing. And living in a jurisdiction like North Carolina with contributory negligence, that's a very real possibility, and it's a very hard possibility. So I just had a hard time dealing with that. And one of the last things that I did was I tried a case that I won, and the other attorney had forgotten to put in their bills and forgotten to put in any summary of their bills. So we got directed verdict on the medical expenses. And they wound up at the end of the day getting about a quarter of what we had offered for the case. It was not a big case. It was a district court case in Wake County. But I felt bad for the other lawyer. I felt bad for the plaintiff. I was glad that my client was coming out of it, but my client wasn't going to be hurt. Their insurance carrier was going to cover everything. And, so anyway, it was bad. It wasn't, as far as the road to Damascus, I guess that's probably as close. That moment was probably as close to that happening as anything. But that was literally maybe 3 weeks before that snowstorm hit, and I got word that that the job opportunity was out there.
Wow. And so you did it for 24 years, and
hmm
then you decided to run for the bench. What made you decide you wanted to be a judge?
I really like wearing robes to work in, as
Well, I mean,
opposed
we're
to
in a
suit.
work from home era. You could
Yeah,
have just
yeah, right.
like put on a bathrobe and
Well, that's true. I would never, as far as you know. Now, I'd had a couple of people mention to me that they thought that I would be a good judge, and I had thought about it for some time, and had come close to running a couple of times. And I was actually approached and recruited to run for the position. And it happened. It was another sort of, it was, for lack of another metaphor, it was another sort of road to Damascus moment where I had just sat down about a week before to plan out the financing and website expenses and advertising and CLE and what I was going to be doing for 2024. And things looked good. But at the same time, I was thinking, is this where I want to continue to be? I had had my own firm since 2020, since just as the pandemic was starting, and things had gone well for 4 years. But at the same time, I thought, well, what is this going to be the final phase of my career? Because I turned 53 this year, so I'm still pretty young, but at the same time, if I'm going to work another 20, 25 years, what does that mean professionally? And am I going to keep doing the same thing? And then the call came in, and it just seemed very, very serendipitous that would be that the event of sort of planning and asking myself these questions would happen at the same time that the recruiting call came to talk about the position.
so folks have said you'd make a good judge. What makes a good judge?
Well, again, you have to enjoy the robe. You got to wear that a lot. That was a question that got asked, of course, all the time. All the groups that are looking to endorse you, who send out the questionnaires and do interviews, they want to say, well, what makes a good judge? And you have to know the law. You have to be able to. When you don't know the law, you have to be able to say, explain it to me, lawyers, the two of you or three of you or however many lawyers are, and tell me what the argument is here, because nobody knows it all. There's too much law to know. And you can't possibly expect to know everything about criminal law and civil law, or within those two arenas. You can't possibly expect to know it all. And if you do, you maybe have set yourself up for a disaster. So you have to know your limitations, but you have to have a good grounding in it. You have to have, I think, experience with the court system and to actually be part of it. Which is not to say that people that are transactional lawyers can't make good attorneys, or people that don't go to trial can't make good judges. But I think it certainly helps. I think you have to have a judicial temperament, which means you have to be patient, but you have to be prepared to be firm. You have to be prepared to run the show. You have to be prepared to be decisive, and to understand that you're going to make some wrong decisions, and some of those wrong decisions are going to make a significant difference in the outcome of a case. Some of them are not, but the decision has to be made, and it's up to you as the judge to make it. And so I don't think you can be indecisive and be an effective judge. You also can't have an immediate knee-jerk reaction and be an effective judge. But I think above all those things, you have to know that the judge has sort of, the way I look at it, is a judge has two constituents. And one of those is the Constitution, the state and federal constitutions. And the other constituency is the public. And so you've got to look at a way to uphold and protect the Constitution. I think that you have to be there to see how it evolves, and see how it lives up to its promise, because I think that happens daily. Because I think our state and federal constitutions were built to be, designed to be living and evolving, not just documents, but sources of our rights and our laws. And you have to be there to serve the public. But I think it's the idea of having a heart and a mind for service has to be your primary. That's the first thing that I think a judge should have. You have to be prepared to say, okay, this is a role where I'm going to be a servant, because you're going to wield power. That's inevitable, and you have to be prepared to say, okay, how am I? Is this going to be might because of right or might for right? And you just have to do the best job that you can to provide the best service that you can to the not just to the people that elected you, but to everyone who lives under your jurisdiction. I think that's the first and most important part of being a judge is understanding service.
And you talk about your duty to the Constitution. We live in interesting times for the rule of law
Why would
set
you ever
by.
say such a thing? I can't believe.
That's not always apparent in, I don't guess, in Superior Court. We're not having those conversations in that arena now. Usually you were having them on the national level, and
Right.
the sort of tenor of the time is being set by the national conversation. But still, one of the things that is on a lot of people's minds, and particularly lawyers' minds, because you all have sworn a duty, an oath to uphold, each of you, no matter if you practice, no matter what kind of law you practice, whether you practice a civil rights lawyer or a tax lawyer, you have all sworn to an oath to uphold the tenets of the Constitution. Does that have any bearing on the way you think about this when you're being sworn in January as we enter into this new, brave new era?
Well, I think that we live in a time when like you said, it's an interesting time to be. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times," and it can be used as either a blessing or a curse. And so, and I think sometimes when that proverb or saying lives up to its best, its fullest expression is when you live in both an era that's both interesting and interesting in a good and a bad way. I think that we're facing a point in time where there's a lot of people who have very little regard for the rule of law, and I think that as a judge, it's important to set a standard and an example for how the rule of law is supposed to work so that people, because most people have very very little interaction with judges. They have less interaction. Fewer people certainly have interaction with judges in a civil setting than do in a criminal setting, because that's so many people come through traffic court, have misdemeanors to deal with, and that's much more likely to happen to somebody than having to go through a civil trial or any kind of civil proceeding that deals with a judge. So I think it's important for us as judges to show the people, whether they're jurors, whether they're litigants, whether they're defendants, whether they're victims, that there is that both of the rule of law can be respected and upheld, but can be used to serve people as well, and that it needs to provide the guardrails for society to stay into. Jon Stewart has done a number of really great things on the Daily Show lately, where he talked about the three concepts behind government being the rules, the loopholes, and the norms. And that you have people who talk about the rules, saying you can or can't do this, and then you have people who decide they find loopholes to get around or get through those rules. And then you have people who say, okay, here are the norms. The norms are going to, are nobody, surely nobody would use this loophole to circumvent this law. And as they're saying it, someone's doing it. And so I think it's important if we're going to continue to try and uphold and encourage the rule of law, which I think is the only way that we're going to have a civilized society, is for us to say, and this is on both sides of the political spectrum and everything in between and outside those two main philosophies, is to say, look, we have to have some controls. We have to have some structure for the society, or it just turns into chaos. As entertaining as that might be, you're only going to think it's entertaining for so long. At some point, the traffic lights won't work anymore. The water won't run anymore. The schools won't function anymore. The military shuts down, and suddenly we're overrun by, Portugal. Uh, and so, um,
Yes.
Yeah, it's, and I don't speak Portuguese. If it needs to be either
That's
someone who
right. They all
speaks,
speak English.
yeah, I need someone who speaks English, French, or Spanish. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to even order my dinner. But I just think we need to, the best way to make that argument, actions speak louder than words. So the best way to make the argument is to show people how it works. And then if they want to say, well, I don't understand, why did you do this in court today? Why did you rule this way or not? And of course, there's times when a judge can't do that, when it's not appropriate to really get down into the nitty gritty of telling, litigants who are upset. Sometimes the best thing is to say, well, you need to talk to your lawyer. And that's where, of course, attorneys come into that equation as well, as making sure that they're upholding the rule of law. But there are also times I think when the judge needs to say, well, let me explain what happened here and let me tell you why it happened. And one of the things that I hope that I can find a way to do, because I did have a voter ask me, how I intended to communicate with people who were going to vote for me, how I intended to communicate with them once I was on the bench. And there was somebody else in line. And as soon as this person asked me that, the person behind him said, well, he can't do that. He's a judge. They can't give you legal advice. And I was like, well, that's 100% true. I can't give you legal advice. What I can do is make myself available. And I don't know how this is going to play out. And I don't know how effective or how smart it will be for me to try this, but to provide some sort of access where, whether it's a monthly community meeting or just going to local civic groups and speaking on a regular basis and finding topics that people care about, and trying to address them in a way that doesn't approach things from a political agenda, but addresses them from an agenda of what would work best to keep things working for everybody. And I think you can do that. And that's one of the great things about the bar awards and about working with that group, was hopefully some of that has taught me to do some of that with humor, so that it's not quite so dry and mind numbing as just reading jury instructions to somebody. Usually when you ask most people about 2 or 3 days after a trial is over, well, what were the jury instructions like? They would be like, what? I don't really remember that. But I think the chance to do that is out there.
Great. All right. Well, we are very, very sad to be losing you as an NCAJ member, but we are proud and hopeful for your journey to begin as a Superior Court judge, and we wish you all the best in your the new leg of your adventure.
Well, Amber, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys asking me to come on the podcast. And I just want to say too to everybody who is in NCAJ, and the people who have retired or have moved on to other things, and the people who are coming on board, it's a great organization. It's not always going to do what you want it to do, but every organization is like that. Government is like that. And I just appreciate all I'm going to miss getting to go to, I'm not going to miss all the meetings, but there are a lot of the meetings that I will miss. And I certainly will miss things like the listserv for auto torts, and both the camaraderie and the willingness to share on there. And I just really hope everybody continues to share and to promote a high level of professionalism. And I hope that the new lawyers coming on, and I hope the old lawyers who are there, I hope people continue to not be afraid to ask questions. Everybody has just a second when they forget something that they ought to know. And this is a group of people that I have never known to be stingy with help or with advice. We've got some of the very best lawyers in the country who work in this group, and we've got lawyers who are going to be some of the best lawyers in the country. And so it's been my absolute privilege and delight to be part of the group, and I will certainly miss everybody, and I look forward to seeing everyone. I hope I don't see anyone as a defendant, but I hope I do get to see everyone in court at some point, and I just wish everybody the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we will see you, if not in court, then certainly at convention and
absolutely,
and around. All right. Well, Sean, this has been delightful so much. Happy New Year and best of luck. Thanks for being
Thank
on the
you.
pod. And Happy New Year to everyone else. And thanks for listening.